What up, y'all? Welcome to the Church Voice Podcast. This is the co-host, Tyler Rhodes, having to do the intro because our host, Spencer Davis, is having a hard time collecting himself.
Yeah, I just can't get myself together today.
It's all good. It happens.
Yeah.
We're in here laughing like a bunch of small children.
It's because we have a special guest. So again, I'm Pastor Spencer Davis, all right? We're here at Christian Center Church for the Church Voice Podcast, where, again, our mission, if we're going to say it every single week, is building the body of Christ through a variety of voices. So we're here again for another episode. I am actually really excited. I don't know why I'm nervous. It's just because we haven't had a guest in a while.
No, we haven't.
Go ahead and introduce our guest for this week. He's sitting right here. I'm talking about him as if he's not sitting here.
Yeah, but they can't see us.
Yeah, that's right.
So, sitting over here to my right is Jonathan Abernathy. So I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a moment. But this is my best friend in the world over here. We met senior year of high school because we were seniors who came into this high school after freshman year. And so we didn't have a class called Freshman 101, which was how to be successful in high school. So as two graduating seniors, as two graduating seniors, they forced us to be in that class.
Like they said we wouldn't be able to graduate.
Oh, you two seniors were in the Freshman 101
We were
class.
in there with ninth graders down in South Georgia.
Wow.
Freshmen.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we made a mockery of the class. And so we made a mockery of it together.
Hey.
Friendship started. There it was. And him and his wife, Samantha, and their son, Asher, doing some awesome things. So I wanted to let him introduce that and share with y'all what he's up to.
Yeah, guys, I'm so excited to be with you guys here. We are missionaries with Overland Missions, and what we do is we lead teams out on expeditions around the world. So whether that's in the Amazon in Brazil or in the bush of Africa in Zambia, we've got places everywhere. And it's really the hard-to-reach places that we key in on, not like near cities or just what you would consider very populous areas. That's a focus of a lot of NGOs and a lot of other organizations, but we like to go out to where it's hard to get those people. So my wife, my son, and I, we're gearing up to get back to Brazil in the Amazon, and we're just excited to be here with Christian Center Church, and I'm excited to be here with you guys on the podcast.
Just to reiterate what you're saying, because I've been on one trip with you, to the Amazon in Brazil, and just to kind of give the audience an example of how far in the bush and like out in the rainforest that you guys go and that you specialize in going. When we landed in Manaus, Brazil, and we went and got on a riverboat there, and we rode 28 hours into the Amazon River, and then that's where we stopped at the villages and went and ministered to those people. So Overland and Jonathan and Samantha and all of both the expedition leaders who lead the trips, then the sector missionaries who are out there, they go to those, like you're saying, hard to reach places. And it's really an incredible thing that y'all are doing. So we're excited to have you on too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And so now that we've got the introductions out of the way, I need some medicine, all right? So we're doing this thing, and we're just calling it the medicine of the week, all right? Because laughter doeseth good like medicine. So either one of you guys, give me some medicine for the week. Something funny that happened, something that our audience, I was going to say our viewers, nobody's watching us, but our listeners can just get a laugh out of.
Yeah. Well, what immediately comes to mind is what happened with all three of us the last 2 days. So recently, our maintenance team came to me and asked if I wanted one of those little basketball games, the little shoot 'em up basketball hoops where you shoot the ball and it rolls back to you for the youth group game room. I was like, absolutely. And as a grown man, I have had more fun on that game than I think the students combined. So we go down there like every morning and shoot.
Yeah.
And the last couple of days, we've had some incredible moments take place.
I don't think it was for the I appreciate the sentiment, but I think you got it for us. I feel that, and I'm grateful. But yeah, we've had a time of it. I don't want to talk about myself, because I don't know what happens, but when we get intense in the moment, like so mind you, it's a small rim. It's short distance, whatever. I'm trying to gauge my depth perception.
You're really building yourself up like this. Yeah.
Listen, I gotta explain myself. I don't want to be the guy just shooting air balls for no reason.
These aren't just air balls, okay? I need to hop in right here. These are not just air balls. These jokers are landing at the free throw line on that mug.
And you're maybe 4 feet away from like the actual goal. So we're talking about like 2.5 feet worth of velocity and the ball just falling flat.
Listen, I get nervous. Okay. I don't know why, especially towards the end of the game. I'm like, I gotta make it. And like my elbow just loses all feeling and I don't know what happens. And I hear Jonathan in the back of my ear, like if I hit the edge of the rim, he's already chuckling behind me.
Because I know what's about to happen.
Mind you, that adds to my stress. So then when I hit the air ball, he starts cracking up and it's just over from there. It's over from there. And I'm the laughing stock of basketball.
What's so funny is that you go from, like a Devin Booker-esque beautiful jump shot. I mean, that ball is just, it's swishing. Listen, sometimes you're hitting it and the net ain't touching, and all of a sudden you go all Angry Birds, and that mug is just flying through. And I cannot explain to people how not close these shots are.
And I don't get it either. I don't know what happens to me. I just, like I said, I just get nervous. But we had an event happen today. Today in our basketball endeavors.
Rare experience.
Yeah. So, who wants to tell the audience about it?
I'll tell the audience about it because I was
hopped on that microphone.
I was a bystander, so I had to pull myself away from the competition due to an injury. So I was a happy viewer. And what was going on is as much as we make fun of Spencer for like not making it to the goal or barely, when things get rough or get just close, Pastor Tyler's shot becomes more of a laser, doinking off the front of the rim or the backboard. And again, this is like maybe 5 feet away. So I'm sitting here watching balls barely making it to the rim and the ones launching off of the backboard. And so the game ends and I'm pleasantly, just surprised at how well this is going for me. And Pastor Tyler goes for a sip of coffee and all I say is, man, this is entertaining. And Pastor Tyler spits out all of his coffee and is like bending over. And I mean, of course, Spencer and I are laughing, but then this man like throws up the rest of his coffee. It goes like he was about to die. It was funny as before I said, bro, you okay? Like from the depths of his soul, like when Adam came up from the sleep that God put him in, just the first breath. Oh my God!
I had no air left. Okay. Spencer, you said that it sounded exactly like I was drowning.
Yes.
And like just come
you
up out of the
broke
water.
The surface of the water.
I broke the surface of that coffee in my lungs because it was a sincere spit take. How rare are those?
Yeah.
You catch somebody in a spit take, and he caught me nasty.
Yeah.
Spit that coffee everywhere. But I had took such a huge gulp that there was still coffee in the back of my throat. But I couldn't swallow it because I was laughing so hard, but I couldn't spit it out. And so, it's cold over here in South Bend right now, in early February. So I can't breathe out of my nose. So I'm like choking to death over there on the coffee. And I finally just throw it up back in the cup. And it was awful.
Oh, it was awfully wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Awfully
and like
wonderful.
So my shots were hitting so hard off the backboard because I kept sticking my hips out backwards while I was shooting because I felt all the stress in my tailbone. I don't know why. That's where the stress hit me.
Something comes over your body especially about 50, because you got to understand these are 60-second games. So about 15 seconds left. And especially if you hear your opponent, if you hear them hit a shot, like if you hear that beep, it's like, like your whole body just like,
especially if it's a close game.
Oh yeah. And you just turn into a noodle and like things just like that's what happens to my arm. It just goes noodle. And I'm like, and like it drops right in the.
I feel like we all found out we don't have the clutch gene.
Not at all. Not at all. At least not on a kids basketball thing. Well, I don't know. Maybe that happens to me in real basketball too. I just won't admit it.
If we ever play and I see you airball like at the end of a game, I'm still gonna laugh.
Oh yeah, I'll lose it.
Yeah. Well, that's good medicine. So listen, we're going to get into our topic because we don't want to keep you guys for too long. But listen, we got something good for you. And it's not necessarily from us because and Jonathan, I know we kind of talked about it, but our whole vision and mission behind building the body of Christ through a variety of voices. Sorry, I'm still thinking about this spit take. But building the body of Christ through a variety of voices is that we draw from historical voices. So, men and women of old and from the past who really pioneered the faith, who did, just incredible exploits for the Lord or, by man's standards or by just spiritual standards. And so we've got, obviously, since you're a missionary, we wanted to talk about a missionary from the past, and we asked you kind of, who you would want to talk about. And the first person you brought up was David Livingstone. Yeah. Livingstone, okay? Because you told me Livingstone, so I'm thinking like living. I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't expect it to be Livingstone at the end. That's just me. But it's spelled Livingstone if you want to look him up. But I want to give a quick bio about him. So he, I don't know if I've got my dates right here, but he was a missionary in the early 1800s.
Yeah, the 1800s.
Yeah, 1800s. I think, early to mid 1800s is when he was kind of doing his work. But he was a British missionary and explorer. One of the most popular heroes in the Victorian area. Really, within his time, he was one of the biggest heroes and the biggest names in Europe at the time. Mm-hmm. Not just for his missionary work, but really for his exploration, for his geographical contributions. He really helped map out the whole interior of Africa, really. He found the Zambezi River. I mean, like all kinds of stuff. To the point that he even discovered Victoria Falls, which is one of the biggest the biggest waterfall in the world, at least to my understanding, correct?
I think
that's what Google said.
I think volume.
Okay.
Volume of water.
Yeah. So Victoria Falls, you can look that up as well. But he actually named that after the Queen, and so he discovered that, named that, or the first European to lay eyes on it. But this, I wanted to give. So that's a bio on David Livingstone. Obviously, he did so much, and his story is so deep and so in depth. But one interesting fact, this is what I wanted to share with you guys, because I told him, I'm like, I've got an interesting fact, but we're going to wait for the podcast. But this is so deep, so crazy to me. So upon his death, all right, not really a fun fact, but it's a fact. But upon his death, right, his faithful attendants, like two guys that I can't remember their names right now, but African guys who traveled with him, did went everywhere with him. But upon his death, those two attendants removed his heart and buried it in Africa where he died. I thought that was so deep. And obviously the rest of his remains went back to Europe and he was buried and honored in that way. But I thought that was just so wild. Mm-hmm. So wild. So, but that's David Livingstone. So we want to talk about him, but, Pastor Tyler, you've got a quote, that we all kind of just agreed on. But go ahead and share that quote and then kind of get our conversation started with where we want to go with this one.
Yeah. When Jonathan brought up the topic, he really brought up a lot of great quotes and a lot of great stories, from David Livingstone. And really, I felt like this quote that I'm about to share, I really felt like that kind of summarized him. Mm-hmm. And it really gives good perspective into the kind of man that he was. So the quote is this: "I will go anywhere as long as it is forward." I will go anywhere as long as it is forward. So here's where we can kind of set the table for the discussion. God is missional. Mm-hmm. God is missional. Oftentimes you will hear people talk about God being an evangelist and different things like that. And that's fine. He's evangelistic. I prefer the word missional. And the reason why I prefer that is because God being missional isn't only for unbelievers. It's also for us. So everything, him being missional means that everything that he does has purpose and intentionality, both for the present and the future. So God is both always here right now, and he's always moving forward. He's always pushing us ahead into his plans and purposes. And so it's important to recognize that Jesus was also missional. Everything had a purpose. And we believe that David Livingstone is a perfect example of that forward-thinking, forward-moving, enduring attitude that he had to always be missional, to give everything for the gospel. And so I think that we can look at his example as a great example of both God and Jesus. Well, in the Spirit, we can say that too, obviously, of being missional, being intentional, always moving forward. So I think that that's a good place where we can kind of set the table and talk about, as believers, in us attempting to practice the way of Jesus, always being missional.
Yeah. I have to ask, and again, being the missionary in the room, Jonathan, how does that speak to you in the work that you do? And I mean, you've got a family now. And mind you, when we said your son, we thought about like I mean, it's easy to say son, like he's walking around. Like, how old is your son?
Yeah, he's 7 months.
Yeah. So it's a
he
fresh
walking nowhere.
Son. Yeah, right. So this is a baby, you know. But again, I just to put it in perspective, you know, you've got a young family. What does that say to you as a missionary, in everything that you do? That quote, how does that speak to you?
Well, the quote gives perspective.
Yeah. So
to keep moving forward, to keep doing something, because I mean, we have to be doing something. We have to be. I would use the term productive. That's not popular in this culture in America. We like comfort a lot, and I mean, just being real, but being productive. I mean, I think even Peter talks about it, where he says, if you do these things, he lists so many qualities or characteristics of a believer. And he says, if these qualities are in you and increasing, then you won't be basically unproductive. You won't be unfruitful for the gospel.
It's one of my favorite passages.
Yeah.
2 Peter chapter 1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think about, is like, if you're moving forward, if you just got your feet moving forward, whatever you're doing, not even missionary, but you asked about me, you know, being a missionary, just keep moving forward. And especially in this time that we're in, where everybody's saying stop, you know, everybody's saying don't move forward. I don't see anything in the Bible or anything about the life of any of the disciples or even Jesus that says when things got hard or when things were unfavorable or even dangerous, to stop. I mean, you want to talk about the government. When was the government ever favorable towards Jesus or the disciples? You know, and there was obviously, you know, sickness and disease. I mean, leprosy was a common thing back then. Did that stop Jesus from ministering to them? No. So I think it really puts purpose behind or in what we do. Is like, I'll do anything, you know, I'll go anywhere, but it has to be forward, because you can be unproductive doing a mission trip or expedition, because you're not moving forward.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that comes up in my spirit is the being able to move forward requires you to face fear. Because and I think, and I read about John Livingstone when we decided to talk about David. He had a brother named John. Somebody's named John Livingstone. Anyway, but we're talking about
somewhere
David.
In the history of the world, there's somebody named John Livingstone.
Okay, I messed up, David. But I and it's funny because as I'm reading, honey, we're on the podcast. Got to call you back. Love you, bye. Sorry, y'all. That was Bay. You got to answer to Bay. All right. So anyway. So, but when I read about him, he went through a whole bunch of mess, man. I mean, a whole bunch of mess from personal, relational. I mean, the man even got attacked by a lion. I mean, like all kinds of stuff. And this was early on that a lot of these things happened. And then when he was in Africa, went, went back to England finally, and then went back to Africa. And when he went back, it was even worse of a time than he went the first time. But what strikes me is that the previous, and this is where I'm at with this practicality for us today, is that the previous experiences, the troubles that he went through, the trials, the whatever it was, he didn't allow that fear to paralyze him in his moving forward. And so I think that's what happens so many times. And we preach about it, we talk about it, but like, let's keep it real, is that a lot of times if something negative happens in the experience that I'm trying to pursue, because of that something negative and the fear of that negative happening again, I will not move forward. If I make what I determine to be a bad decision, or what others determine to be a bad decision, I will not move forward any longer because I'm afraid that's going to happen again.
Well, what I wanted to just tag on right quick is a lot of times, and I'll see people do this, something negative, it may be completely out of your control, something negative will happen or something bad will happen, and then for some reason people say, oh, that's a sign. I'm not supposed to do this. And I just have to encourage people listening, like, at what point is God going to give you a sign not to preach the gospel? At what point is God going to give you a sign not to go into all the world? It's just not going to happen. It's your flesh, yourself telling you like this might kill us. Stop. So let's reason.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the definitions of anxiety, is that the constant fear and stress and dread that the past will repeat itself, or that there is some unforeseen outcome that will happen, and then that could repeat itself. That is like, you look up the definition of anxiety, that is one of the definitions they will give you, is the fear of what's coming, or the fear that what's happened will happen again. And it's interesting to me when Jesus talks about anxiety, when he talks about how people are he says, don't be anxious about what you're going to eat or drink or wear.
It's hard.
And so he goes, yeah, it is.
I like food.
I know. He goes through all those examples with the flowers of the field and the sparrows and all of these kinds of things. He goes through those examples to teach his disciples not to worry. But what's interesting to me is as soon as he gets done talking about anxiety, the next thing that he says, and oftentimes when there's a break in heading, we think there's a break in conversation in our Bibles. And that's not always the case. Oftentimes, even when there's a new subject, it's still the same conversation. So the next thing Jesus says is, be ready for service and have your lamps lit. So if I'm anxious and I'm focused on what may happen, or I'm focused on the repeated past, my mind is off having my lamp lit, right, being ready for service. That always being missional and purposeful in what I'm doing, always moving forward. And what it does, Jonathan, you're exactly right. It paralyzes us and it causes us to stop what God is doing in us and what he wants to do through us in the world. And I'm reminded too of those difficulties like you both were talking about in James 1, when he says that consider trials pure joy, because later he says the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So it is that testing and that difficulty, those trials, that make us strong. And one of the reasons why we're not always moving forward is because we're soft. And you talked about the comforts earlier. But when that comfort is taken away, it exposes how soft we are, and that we're not able to keep moving forward, and that we're not strong, that faith hasn't been tested.
I think a lot of it is being like having that journey on your mind. And just as an example, like if you've ever climbed a mountain or if you've hiked, you'll eventually reach places on that mountain or in that place that you're hiking, or even if you're just exploring or going anywhere, you'll find a place that's actually not that bad. It's kind of comfortable, and if everybody just makes camp at that place, nobody ever reaches the summit. Yeah. Nobody ever goes forward. And I think a lot of times we justify, well, I've done this, and you can look, I've climbed some of the mountain, and now I've made base here. I've made camp here, and now I'm not going to go any forward because, I've done my work. I've made it this far, and now this is comfortable. This is something that I don't have to go for. Maybe somebody will start here. But the problem is nobody ever starts at the middle of a mountain. Nobody does. You have to start at the base of it and move up. So if everybody keeps just stopping where it's easy to stop, nobody's going to. And I believe that's the American church. Is generationally, we just kept getting to a point where it's easy to stop and it's easy to build off of this area that we've now called our own, and nobody's gone farther. I won't say nobody. There's been a few, but that's because the farther you go up the mountain, the less you can carry. The less air that's available. We want to talk about, a harsh environment. We're over here feeling, I think it's 12 degrees, feels like -6 in South Bend. If I wish I had it in front of me, what's it like at the summit of Mount Everest? What does that feel like? And it's just, like you said, I think generationally, we've just become getting more and more soft as the church.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I hate to say this, but I'm included in that, and we've got to be careful of that. But one thing that came to me when you were saying that is that again, going back to our individual, our fourth guest, I guess, if you will, David Livingstone, not John. But his why was so huge. The reason why he was moving forward, in what I was reading about him, he constantly said, I must reach the interior of Africa. Like the gospel must get to Africa, and I must reach this place that I have to go. I must get across Africa. I must get to the interiors of Africa. And he there were so many quotes in this book that I was reading, and he constantly reminded himself of that why. And that why is what pushed him forward. And yes, our why, and if you're listening to this, your why may not be to get to the interior of Africa, but I think that we have to determine what our why is in order for us to continue moving forward. Because if you don't have a why, and if that why is not big enough, you will find a place of comfort, and you will find even a place of accomplishment that causes you not to keep going. And I'm just going to repeat that. You'll find a place of comfort, and you'll find a place of accomplishment to where you don't keep going. And mind you, David had done a lot. He had done a lot in his career already when he was still saying, I have to get further into Africa. Because one, he wanted to build up civilization in general and get the gospel to people. But he's like, I have to get to this place, even though I had already had success. Even though, and mind you, when he went back to England the first time, he was a hero. I don't even know who to compare it to today. But he came back to England an absolute hero. His name was in the newspaper. He was being talked about. He was a celebrity. He had reached a level of success, but he's like, no, I have to go back and I have to go further, and I have to keep going forward because of this why. Because of this why. Not just because, but because there's something that I have to do. And again, it doesn't have to be the center of Africa. But no matter what, your why can be as big to you as the center of Africa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We should be that driven by whatever that why is. Mm-hmm. And that's critically important for us to move forward. I wake up every single day, and I think about where I came from. A big part of my why is the fact that really no one that I know, from my past or from my childhood, is walking this walk. Not to say that there's not people who believe in Jesus or whatever, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. But again, I want to be an example, to my family and to even people who've known me before. I want to be an example to my wife and to my children. They're my whys. And so I've got to get up every single day and keep moving forward for them.
And it's important too that we recognize that all of our whys are submitted to the first why, which is the mission of God in the world.
Exactly.
That everything that I'm doing and all of those other whys, because we have several whys. My family's a why too, and I'm sure yours is a why as well.
I meant Jesus first. That's what I meant.
Not a rebuke. Not a rebuke. I know where you're at. But it's because of that mission that God is doing in the world and I think a lot of people who even aren't saved feel this, that the world is moving toward an end. It's moving toward a consummation. That things that begin must cease to exist at some point. That when something has an introduction, there's going to be a consummation at some point. And so as we continue moving towards the ends of God, what that does is it gives us purpose and mission every day to say, doing nothing is not an option. It's not an option. And it doesn't mean that I have to do everything, because as the body of Christ,
across the center of Africa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
We
not
don't
what it
have to
means.
do that. We don't all have to be missionaries with Overland Missions. But if that's what God's called you to do, then you better do it. Yeah. And it's the same with us, that being a youth pastor and a children's pastor, that as He's called us to do those things, we have to be driven by that why, the mission of God, and then those other whys that are submitted to it, and to continue chasing after Him, chasing after people, doing those things, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's difficult, and all of those kinds of things. God has done too much in the world, too much in us, too much through us for us to stop now. And it just seems that over time, as we don't see immediate results, it seems that why begins to lessen into a bunch of whats. And when we accomplish whatever it is, like you said, comfort, accomplishment, a certain status, whatever it is, when we begin to accomplish those whats, then the why seems to be diminished. But we don't do it for results. Results are not the why. The why is Jesus and what He's doing in the world, and then these other whys that are submitted to it, like family, city, a certain segment of the population, like for David Livingstone, it being Africa, that those other whys are all submitted to that one thing, that I'm serving and obeying my Savior. And that's what's going to continue driving us into doing what we do. And I know people will often ask, what is it? And I think this is a good thing to hit too before we go. People will often ask, what is it that I should be doing? What is it that, you guys are saying I need to be missional. Okay, that's fine. I can't go to Brazil this summer. Even though you should, we're going to talk about that later. But I'm going to throw that little commercial in there. But what is it that I should be doing?
Have you ever wanted to go to Brazil?
But one of the things I think is important to say, first and foremost, is that we can't tell you what to do. We can't say, this is exactly what you should be doing. We can give suggestions, but in us spending our personal time of devotion with the Spirit, that's where we're going to get those instructions for how He wants to use us. Because being missional isn't random. It's intentional. But that also means that we shouldn't sit around and wait, hoping for God to just lay things out before us. So we know that we need to share the gospel. We know that we need to be witnesses for Christ. We know that we need to give and serve and be in a local church, these kinds of things. But as you guys, and I can see both of your brains spinning, what are some of those general things we can do? And then maybe if you have advice for someone to find those specific directives from God, again, we can't tell them what they are, but maybe there's some advice we can give as to what are some of the things that we can do in the meantime as we're waiting. Maybe as we're waiting for that why to come about. Maybe someone listening doesn't have it yet, but there's still work to do while you wait for the why. Absolutely. So what are some of those things someone can do?
I think, and if this is too direct, of course, correct me. But when you look at and I would say the old church, I would say the first church, Acts.
That one over there on Michigan Street?
Yeah. First church. Oh, first church. No, but like the one in Acts, like the first church that got together, you were one of two people. You were either a sender or you were a goer. And I would think that if you don't know where to go or how to go, you find somebody who does and you help send. And I think in that instance, you're still... That's Romans 10. If you want to go read that, how will they believe unless there's somebody to preach? How will they preach? That whole line of reasoning. but you're one of two people. You're either sending or you're going. But it's the same. It's the same thing. It goes right along with the quote. I will go anywhere provided it be forward. Mm-hmm. I am helping move this thing along, and I think in doing so, you'll find that purpose, that mission that's yours, and it might just be sending. Because how can they go unless they're sent? Or you might find a passion within you. And, of course, and I'm not just talking about helping send missionaries go abroad and go internationally.
Yeah, break down that sending.
Yeah. Sending is, supporting the ministry that is around you to get lost people saved. So whether that is sending a missionary to Brazil or helping a pastor reach the inner city, by helping with resources, whatever that is, that's helping being a sender.
Serving in children's church. No, I'm just kidding.
That's another commercial.
That's another commercial.
No, it's not my episode.
I've got an example of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe a sending that isn't just missionary support, even though that's important. Mm-hmm. When I was in college, my senior year, I was about to graduate. And so graduation was on Friday. On Thursday, I get a call from our financial department saying you've got a hold on your account. I'm like, nobody ever told me this was the case. What's going on? And they told me, they're like, well, sorry, you got to pay $3,000 by tomorrow or else you can't graduate.
I feel like those just come up when people got to graduate. Bro, I've heard so many, just a side note, I've heard so many stories of that just happening. It's like, let's squeeze that last little bit, that last little couple grand before they go.
For sure. The financial departments at universities need to retake communication class. Yeah. Apparently it didn't work its way all the way through. But, sorry, I'm just saying. Yeah. But so they tell me this and I'm like, okay, well, I ain't graduating then. I mean, I don't come from a wealthy family. We're pretty broke. And so I'm like, oh, well, we'll pray, I have faith, Christ can make a way, those kind of things. So the next day, Friday, graduation day, this dude in my dad's church, a little bitty church in South Georgia, one of the smallest town I've ever seen. It's called Pitts, Georgia. Nobody's ever heard of it. And he wakes up that morning, God speaks to him and says that he wants to bless me. So this man calls up my dad and he said, what's Tyler's need? My dad was like, what you mean? He said, what's Tyler's need? The Lord spoke to me this morning. I need you to tell me what the need is. Well, my dad said, well, I'm just going to keep it real with you.
Right.
It's $3,000.
Yeah.
The dude showed up a few minutes later with 30 hundies ready. So my dad sent it to me.
Just keep $100 bills in his
I think if I remember correctly, he went to the bank.
Oh, he probably did.
Went straight to the bank.
He's one of them South Georgia farmers. So he wasn't hurting. Okay. Yeah. They got money. Them dudes, they got money. So he gets it to my dad. My dad gets it to me. I pay him off by mid-afternoon and is able to graduate. And that's part of what launched me into what I'm doing, because that could have been a moment that was a huge stumbling block and disappointment, as I'd done all this work, paid all this money, all these kinds of things, and him being sensitive to the voice of the Spirit and being missional, ready to act, ready to go hit up the bank, say, hey, what's the need? I got you. That man is a sender. Mm-hmm. And he's done a lot of things like that over the years. So those are even some of the smaller ways that we can help launch people goers into what God has called them to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and 100%. And I think we should kind of bring it in for a landing right there. And again, I just want to say this podcast is not an ad service, nor is it a commercial, like you said. But if we're being honest, I think that there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity, and there are ways that you can be a part of that. And again, our guest on the podcast this week is a part of an organization like that. So, Jonathan, if you could just tell the listeners just kind of how they can be that sender, or even how they can be a goer. Yeah. How like whatever's on their heart, whether it's sending or going, one of two people, whichever that is. Just kind of, I guess maybe how they can contact you, your organization, how they can get involved sending or going.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is the website. I think overlandmissions.com. And you go on there and there'll be a tab. You can see expeditions. And that is, you'll be able to kind of search through, if you're wanting to go, you'll be able to search through multiple countries, that would be available to you. Like if you're interested in what my family's doing, we're going down to Brazil, probably the end of April and be there till August, and leading expeditions on the Amazon River. So you'd be able to find that, or if it's in Zambia or Cambodia, or other countries, they're there. So that would be the easiest way where you could like apply, and then you'll see the country, you'll click it, and then there'll be like apply, and then you just it's put your information in, and then we'll reach out. If you're wanting to help send, that's something where we have a database of missionaries on the website as well, and you would be able to help send. And what you would do is you could I think it's like a donate page, and you would just go to donate and then fill it out, almost like a subscription. You fill out your information, and then there's a memo. So like if you wanted to support my family, you would put, the memo line, Jonathan Abernathy. And then they make it really easy. They've got these 3 ticks. It's like, if you want this to be a one-time donation, boom, there's one time. If you want this to be yearly, where you have to redo it every year, then boom. Or if you want to become a partner, and do it monthly, you click the monthly, and so it's super simple to help send and help partner, and it's super simple to go. You just need to fill it out and go.
I wanted to say something that you told me recently, both about going and sending, is that I remember you were talking about, I think it was at your yearly conference for your organization last year, I want to say, and you were talking to me afterwards, and that your CEO said that there are countries that are open to your organization.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't have the missionaries to send.
We don't have nearly the manpower. I mean, we have, especially in Africa, just because that's where the fun fact, our CEO, Phil Smathers, is a diehard, dedicated fan of David Livingstone, has studied his life to the nth degree, loves him, loves what he does. And because he was a pioneer, he went into the unknown, and completely unknown. Yeah. So we've been in Africa, I believe, since 1999 officially, probably a little bit beforehand. So we've been there over 10 years. And I mean, I'm talking about places in Zambia, Mozambique, Angola, the Congo has just opened up. And guys, when I'm talking to you about opened up, I mean the emperor of I think it's Lunda. I hope I'm not saying that wrong or the wrong people, but the emperor of the whole people is friends with Overland, and is when are you sending people? I have places for you. Chiefs and headmen and all are wanting people to go to them, and we just simply don't have the manpower to send it through. And that's just in Africa. That there is a massive work to be done in the Amazon. There's a massive work to be done in Asia. There's a massive work to be done in North Africa and other areas. So we just don't have the manpower. And that's part of the reason why expeditions, what my family does and our department that we're a part of, is so important, is we get people involved. And then when they go out there, some people are like, oh, that's it. That was actually Tyler, is he went out and he's like, man, I think 2 weeks is about my limit.
That was it for me.
Yeah. But I was out there and I was like, I could be here for months.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly. And so you find those people that are just like, send me, I want this. And then other people get out there and they love it, but it's not their calling. But then they're like, but I can help send. So yeah, manpower is needed.
That's exactly what I was going to say too, because not only do you guys need more manpower, you need more money power too.
Oh, for sure.
That there are so many missionaries, and you're in contact with a lot of these people who they're new missionaries in Overland, and they're working through the fundraising process.
Absolutely.
And you and Samantha have worked through it yourself.
Working through it still.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. It is, and it's such a grind. First of all, we honor you guys for that. You don't even have a home. You're just back and forth between family here, those kind of things. And so there's so many people in y'all's position. And I'm not going to lie, it grinds my gears to no end to know that there are so many willing missionaries out there, but we're not sending them. And I'm including myself in that. We're not sending them. And so if God lays on your heart to support, whether it's the Abernathys, of course we co-sign on them, please go support. But if there's other missionaries God lays on your heart, Overland organization, if it's another organization, whoever God lays on your heart, let's be a sender. If we're not going to go, let's make sure to be a sender. But we just wanted to make sure to give space to talk about what you guys are doing, what Overland is doing as a whole, because it's such a massively important work. And so we want to make sure to be goers and senders, like you were saying.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
If I could, real quick, just
go ahead.
There's a verse that I found, and I thought it was very, it just really ties into exactly what we're talking about, and it's Proverbs 4:23 through 27, and it says, "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet. Then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil." And so I just think that just kind of captivates the go forward.
Yep.
Don't go left. Don't go right.
Forward.
Ponder on what your feet are doing. They're moving forward.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Well, again, you said Overland Missions.
Yes.
.com.
Overlandmissions.com.
Overlandmissions.com. And again, if you need to find the podcast, if you want to hear about the church, we are completely sponsored, recorded, and supported by Christian Center Church here in South Bend, Indiana. So that is christiancenter.org if you want to check us out there. But thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys for being here. Jonathan, thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure.
And hanging out with us. But yeah, listen, go forward. Keep moving and move forward. But we love you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.
See you guys.